give a hand for his talent. I am pleased to be here. We just want to recognize Ms. Brewer for guiding us here, making sure we knew where to go, President Polk for inviting us, Congresswoman Schlosman for staying the ACP event. You know, you got to pack a lunch when you come to our event. You don't get in and out fast. And to the governor, I think he had to leave, a friend of mine, and State Senator Anthony. Thank you for your service, and I hear people talk about you and how you are. You're probably going to be leaving State Senate soon because you have that type of energy on here. And to the mayor, to Melvin Coleman. I seen Melvin when I got to Lansing, and I thought he retired, and he was still at it. Good to see you, brother. We are in a war. We are in a war that has been declared but not stated. And I'm not talking about the war in Ukraine. I'm not talking about the unfortunate events that's taking place in the Middle East that we witnessed on television today. I'm talking about a war among the classes. A war that's really forcing us to do things differently. But unfortunately, far too many of us, we're not recognizing the true war that we are in because we are caught up in the distractions. The distractions of race, the distraction of gender, the distraction of same-sex loving couples, the distraction of this or that, when at the end of the day, the war is about money. I was pleased to land in Romulus at the airport and come into Lansing, and before I came here, I went directly to stand with Local 602 on the ticket. And the beautiful thing about me going out there, and I've been going anywhere I travel, if there's going to be workers on the picket line, I go because I understand clearly there is no difference between civil rights and worker rights. You think about civil rights within itself, there would have never been a need for a civil rights movement if Africans were not forced here to work for free labor. And those Africans, because they were not citizens who were forced to work for free labor, and they fought to perfect this notion of a democracy. They fought during the Revolutionary War. They fought during the Civil War to free themselves. They fought in every battle this country went into out of this notion, this promise that equal protection should be afforded under the law in our Constitution, and it applied to us as well. They fought for a democracy that oftentimes did see itself to include them. And oftentimes they had to fight for that democracy because this notion of race was used as a tool to distract from what was really taking place. NAACP, a 114-year-old organization founded by people of color. You look at me and say, what do you mean by people of color? Because the individuals who will be identified today as white were not considered white in 1909. You said this. See, white is race is a social construct. And that if you were not white, Anglo-Saxon, Protestant, you were not considered white. In fact, some of the individuals who are not considered white that's here today, their parents or grandparents or great-grandparents born at that time would not have been considered white because they were of the Jewish faith. They was not considered white. If they were Catholic, they were not considered white. If they were outside of what was considered Anglo-Saxon, they were not considered white. You was Irish, you were not considered white. And so this tool of race, this social construct, has always been leveraged in this country specifically to divide people, i.e. workers, for focusing on being paid a fair wage for their labor. That war has germinated to the place where we're seeing more individuals beginning to stand up to assert their voice. It is an interesting reality because what happened in 2016, I think, more than anything else, brought all of this to its head. President White, in her introduction, talked about me being kicked off the board. Man, that was fun. Because at the end of the day, if we don't get our institutions in order, get the houses in order, we will not be equipped to fight the war that's truly in front of us. There's something special going on in Michigan. And it was wonderful to see that for the first time, individuals stood together and pushed back against the forces seeking to divide us. Thriving together is the theme for the National this year. It's the theme for this banquet because we recognize that none of us can do it alone. No individual, no community, no gender identification, no nothing. We cannot do it alone. And in fact, if you look at the state of Michigan, it is the reality of the outcome of the next presidential election. Only if we work together. See, 2016 was a depressing time for probably the majority of us in this room. And in Naacp, we're nonpartisan. We don't support political parties. We don't endorse candidates. We just fight against foolishness and white supremacy. Was a depressing time for most of us. Because we woke up the next morning after all the votes were counted and we realized that a white supremacist and the band of fools was about to occupy the White House. But 2016 was also a self-evaluation for some of us to realize that because our organizational houses were not in order, we allowed it to happen. So if I asked many of you in this room, where were you on that Tuesday in November in 2008, you can recount exactly where you were. I know where I was. I was in the Naacp headquarters in Mississippi, John Lynch Street, and we had people watching the outcome, and as the votes were coming in, I heard women shout. I seen grown men tear up. And I've seen young people excited about something that folks thought would never happen. And I'm sure some of you said that before a black man get elected as president, hell would freeze over. And the devil was cold. And we thought that things were finished. In fact, some news broadcasters said that we were in a post-racial society. You all recall that? Yeah. And for 2 years that we had control of a House and a Senate and someone in the presidency who we thought would carry forth a set of public policy outcomes that would meet the needs and interests of the communities that we come from and represent. But unfortunately, those policymakers didn't realize that a war had started. And that war had started in the way in which the old tools and the norms had begun to erode to a place where they didn't exist. And in 2010, we lose control of House and Senate, and we still have someone in the White House. And many of the promises that we thought we would achieve could not get achieved because if you don't control the purse strings, the executive in office cannot carry out the needs and interests of the communities that that person was elected to carry out. And so we hobbled through 2010 and we hobbled through 2012 and he got reelected and we said, okay, we still got to fight, but we didn't realize that the war began to intensify even more. And by the time we got to 2016, we were ill-equipped with what was confronting us. For the NAACP, there were some of us who were sitting around the board table saying that what you all are doing is malfeasance. Starving the organizations of our effectiveness, not focusing on the real thing, looking more towards the events and the pretty stuff and not building the muscle and the infrastructure to ensure that we had an army to fight with. Oh, I had a ball fussing. I would want to stand on the table sometime. And as soon as they could muster the votes to get rid of me, it was a snowstorm. 12 people couldn't show up to the board meeting. They said, we got them now. And I can recall when they had to vote, and I sat there. And I was sitting next to the state president of Texas, good friend Derrick and Julian Bond. Come around the table, and I realized, oh, they got me. Julian Bond said, no, that ain't possible. I said, Mr. Bond, they got me. They got enough votes. We got 12 people missing. I counted. I said, you know what? I appreciate the opportunity. I'll be back. The very next year, the units across the country, Ms. White, Michigan, and others voted me back to the board. I get back to that table. And the first thing I did, I looked at the budget, looked at the finance report, and I realized that not only were we in trouble, we were an inch from bankruptcy. We had leadership at the time that we said, this is not the right lineup for what we need because it's 2015 and we're going into an election year. Only to realize in 2016, we were not ready. Michigan was not ready. We lost Michigan in 2016, as you recall. Turnout in Southeast Michigan was some of the lowest turnout that we had seen in a long time. A governor who had begun to strip the powers of any municipality with majority black population to control all 8 cities in the state, stripped the power. So they get control of those budgets, to privatize those budgets, created a national crisis in Flint with the water pollution. And that was done to bankrupt Detroit so they get control of the water system. In the backdrop of the auto industry just recovering from bankruptcy itself in 2009 when GM filed a bankruptcy. UAW workers taking concessions so that GM wouldn't close, and although Ford had more cash, so Ford can stabilize, and Chrysler, bless his heart, it didn't know what it's going to do, right? It gets sold off again. Workers take concessions, you get your pensions taken. With those companies, because of that, generated record profits. 2016 happened. Our house was not in order. The women's rights groups' houses were not in order. They were not prepared. The LGBTQIA, they celebrated because they won a victory to have same-sex marriage, but they didn't realize that they were going to be the tip of the spear to divide people based on religious belief. As I look around this room, I'm born and raised in Detroit, and my family migrated from Tennessee to get good jobs. And I look around this room, probably about 95% of your families did the exact same thing. In fact, this is a room of migrant workers. Our families migrated from southern states because of the treatment and the lack of pay for our work. And so we migrated because we heard about this promise in the auto sector. And we moved to Flint, and we moved to Saginaw, we moved to Detroit, and we moved to Lansing. We moved all across the state where there were good paying jobs. They wanted to erect the border. They didn't want us to come, but we came. In fact, poor whites from Kentucky and West Virginia, they did the exact same thing. Looking for jobs, they were migrant workers. They were not considered white. They didn't fall into the classification. Race is a social construct. It was about money. And so for the NAACP, our focus cannot be narrowly on who called us the N-word. Our fight cannot be narrowly on book bans, although we think it's the foolish thing in the world. The question is, why are they banning books? Are they doing it to distract us over here so they can cheapen our labor costs over here? Our fight cannot just be because a piece of public policy is being advanced and we react to that piece of public policy when over here is where the real battle is taking place. So for me, in this position, it is important for us to prepare for the battle that's November 2024. Must be based on that. You know, former Secretary of Labor Richard Rice, who's an economist and just retired from Stanford, he talked about the auto industry strike. And he listed 5 clear reasons for the strike. And as I read it, it made all the sense. First reason, the last decades, the auto industry has had over $250 billion in profits. Second reason, CEO pay has increased by 40% over the last 4 years, over $300 million. Third reason, over the same 4 years, the pay for workers are only increased by 6%. Fourth reason, 2-tier wage system. If I come in today and start working, I'm on a completely different tier next to someone doing the same job, a concession that was made in 2009 to ensure that GM could survive. Fourth reason. Fifth reason, the switching of the job covered under the collective bargaining agreement so that the new economy of electric vehicles would not be covered under the old system of fossil fuel driven vehicles. So as the number of cars driven by gas go down and the number of cars that are electric go up, these jobs are unionized, are decreasing, and these they don't want covered by collective bargaining. They can switch. So when I'm reading this from this economist, this former Secretary of Labor, this recently retired Ivy League professor, it makes all the sense in the world. But what's unique about the sector of the auto industry, it is not just them. It is in every sector in the private industry. And there is an interest by the private industry to distract us based on the tools of race, of religion, of morality, of gender, and anything else that can get us to work up our energy as they create the problem here. But when I got out the car and stood on the picket line earlier with the members of Local 602, I seen older people, I seen younger people, I seen a military veteran, I seen a black woman, I seen a couple of white men with beards who I would thought would be Trumpers, and they made people, they were all standing there together. Because they're all confronted with the same reality. It is a reality that in truth should be the thing that can bring us together if we can focus on what is the real fight. 2 weeks ago, stood with workers from CWA. They were picketing outside of a call center. Communication Workers of America, a company called Naacp, received a huge federal contract to set up call centers to deal with the Affordable Care Act, only to realize that the workers who are working under that contract, they lack both collective bargaining and they don't even have health insurance themselves. In fact, many of them, they qualify for public assistance so that the executives can get larger bonuses. A week before that, I was in Los Angeles in the office there, and I was out marching and picketing with the Workers and Screen Actors Writers Guild, SAG-AFTRA. And it's shining Hollywood until it's not. The average worker in the entertainment industry makes less than $30,000. The average worker in the entertainment industry cannot afford a home mortgage in Los Angeles. The average worker in the entertainment industry is unable to make ends meet, and the studios are making billions of dollars. Just before that, we were working with ACLU, and they were talking about organizing another strike campaign in the healthcare industry. Just before that, because we understand that there is no difference between the worker rights movement and the civil rights movement. It is important for us to get prepared for the battle ahead. When I got out the car and the president of the local, and I began to talk, we've met before, and I spoke several years ago at a UAW CAP conference. And he reminded me of that speech. And I kind of started smiling because it's a speech in which I give a story about what began to motivate me. A student who went to college in Mississippi after finishing high school in Detroit with a 1.8 GPA. I had a ball in high school. As I travel around, people say, oh, you from Detroit, you went to Cass. I said, nope, they didn't even give me the test. That wasn't in the cards. But I'm down in Mississippi and I'm in school and I had a literature professor. Dr. Simmons was a funny looking man. Morehouse graduate, and you know, they are overconfident if you're a Morehouse graduate, you're overconfident. So I had a afro, as if he was in the 70s still, and I don't know if his left arm was too short because he never could get it picked right on the side of his flat. He wore glasses, and sometime during his childhood he had an accident, and therefore he had a glass eye. But he was proud. When you had one of those classes, I don't know if you've ever had a professor like this that you took his class seriously because he didn't mind giving you an F. And so that first semester in his class, I was scared. And when I'm scared, I do better. You know, they say fear is the most powerful emotion. It elicits two reactions from people. Either it propels you to do and act or paralyze you. And as the only child growing up in Detroit who could not fight, I could not be paralyzed until I get whooped. So I propelled and I act. So the first brick I found, I would throw it and run. That first semester, I worked hard. I did well. I was proud of myself. A little bit too proud. I actually got a little cocky. Y'all said this man class was hard. I got a B- out of this class. It's not that hard. Second semester, he gave us an assignment, and we come back, and Pat gave us an assignment and turned it in, and he came back one day. The type of classroom that everyone took very serious. In fact, that once you cross the threshold of the classroom, no one talks. Silent. Walking in, people talking, but once you cross the threshold of this classroom, silent. get in the classroom, probably about 40, 50 students in the classroom, and set up theater styles on the platform, and I'm sitting on one side of the class, and he's unusually late. It's never late. He had the vanilla folder papers in there, he'd come in, and he was visibly upset. Walk in, and afro not picked like always, semi-looking clothes, pass out the papers, I give my paper. It was a D. He looked around and took off his glasses. And it was unique because that glass eye was looking over there, and the good eye was looking over there. But we didn't know which eye was glass and which eye was real. Took it off and said, some of you are resting on your laurels, but I can assure you it's not strong enough. That eye was looking at me. I felt him look through me because I see my D and I knew I had rested on my laurels. Just because I did good that first semester didn't mean I passed the class for the year, nor did it mean that I could pass it if I didn't work hard. Class dismissed. We all walked out. Crossed the threshold, no one talked. We're in the hallway, no one's speaking. Get outside, no one's talking. The young lady who was sitting on the opposite side of the class from me, and obviously, to me, one of the smartest people in the class, she was walking and visibly upset herself. And I said, are you okay? She said, Dr. Simmons didn't have to bust me out like that. I'm shocked. Because that I was looking at me on this side of the class, but that I was looking at her on that side of the class. And we didn't know which eye was real or fake, but we all felt the sting of the statement. And come to find out that everyone in the class felt the same way. Can't rest on the laurels, not strong enough. Yes, NAACP has been here for 114 years. We can't rest on our laurels. We're not strong enough. Yes, many of our families migrated here from Louisiana, Mississippi, and West Tennessee, and Alabama because they heard that there were opportunities in Michigan, and they migrated here. Some of us are the benefactors of that migration, of those migrant workers who came here, and we're doing much better than they could have ever imagined, but we cannot rest on our laurels. It's not strong enough. Some of you may have your grandparents may have been Irish or Jewish or something else, and at one time you were not part of what was considered white under the social construct, but then all of a sudden you was invited into the club of whiteness because they were running out of votes. But if they attack us today, it could be you tomorrow. We can't rest on our laurels. We're not strong enough. We've married 28 years, and if I tell you that my wife and I, we agree every morning when I get up, lightning would strike me down today because we don't agree all the time, but we are together for 28 years. And I am one to say if there are same loving couples who want to go through that, let them do it. Why should we fight that? We can't rest on our laurels. We're not strong enough. And I am a Christian. I love the Lord. You heard my cry. Y'all know this song, the Baptist. Y'all know that song, right? Well, who am I to judge someone else's morality? But for the grace of God, there go I. Cannot rest on our laurels. They're not strong enough. And at the end of the day, it is absolutely critical that we stand together. Because next year's election, there are only two directions we can go. One in which we're looking at the destruction of the democracy as we know it, or two, one in which we are preparing for a future that's more inclusive of all of our talents. That's what's at stake. If you don't believe that's at stake, think about January 6th. If you don't believe that's at stake, take some time and just look at Fox News for a little while. If you don't believe that our democracy is at the split in the road, at the crossroads, think about the current political climate where individuals in this state was plotting to kidnap the governor. All of our accomplishments personally become irrelevant if that's all we are. All of our community advancements become irrelevant if we become myopic. All of the progress that has been made, no matter what organization we are affiliated with, it will become mute if we don't retool those organizations to rise to the challenge. The job of the NAACP over this next 13 months is to fix and make democracy work for everyone. And that whether you're a member or you're not a member, we invite you to join us on that voyage. We cannot allow individuals to think somehow that there is a real choice where there is no choice. Whether that is black men who are listening to conspiracies on the digital platforms and thinking that one party is the same as the other party, that's nonsense. Whether it's some middle management person thinking they're part of a social construct because they have been invited for their vote, only to realize that at the end of the day, when CEOs are being paid 400 times more than you and you are working 12 hours and you're barely able to make your mortgage payment, there isn't a choice. The only choice we have is for us to work together and thrive together. And so for this community, for all that you are demonstrating for this banquet, let's recognize this banquet as a stopping point between the work. Because Dr. Simmons, one of them eyes are looking at you. And he's saying as clear today as he told me when I sat in that class, we cannot rest on our laurels. They're not strong enough. Peace and power.